Hello there and welcome to the Science for Sleep channel. Tonight we'll explore the platypus, one of the most impossible creatures that has existed for over 100 million years. A mammal that lays eggs, a duck-billed animal with fur, a venomous hunter with radar in its bill. These quiet wonders hold secrets we're only beginning to understand. You've got nothing to do but rest. Let your mind relax, your breathing slow, and your body grow light. There's nowhere to go, nothing to solve. Just listen and drift into peaceful sleep. If this helps you rest, consider liking and subscribing. One sleepy soul at a time. Now, let's begin with the platypus. The platypus is a mammal that lays eggs. It is the only mammal in the entire world that does this. This fact alone made scientists in the 1700s completely confused when they first received a platypus specimen from Australia. They thought someone had played a joke, sewing a duck's bill onto a furry animal body as a prank. But it was real. A living, breathing mammal that instead of giving birth to live babies like dogs, cats, or humans, actually lays soft leathery eggs like a reptile or bird. The platypus belongs to a very rare group called monotremes, which means conehole, because all their waste and reproductive systems go through a single opening called a cloaca, just like birds and reptiles do. When a female platypus is ready to have babies, she lays just 1 to 3 tiny eggs, each about the size of a small jelly bean or a grape. She then curls her body around the eggs, incubating them with her warm belly for about 10 days until the babies hatch. The mother doesn't have nipples like other mammals. Instead, milk sweats out through special patches on her belly skin, and the baby platypuses lap it up with their tongues. This strange combination of egg, laying like a bird but nursing babies like a mammal, is why the platypus has confused scientists for over 200 years. Even today, when we know so much about animals, the platypus remains one of the most mysterious creatures on Earth. It's like nature created a test animal, mixing different classes of animals together to see what would work. The platypus proves that evolution doesn't always follow the rules we expect. Sometimes it creates something completely unexpected, something that exists in its own special category, belonging to mammals but doing things that reptiles do. When scientists saw a platypus for the first time, they thought it was a joke. It looked a duck bill sewn onto a mammal body. In 1799, the first platypus skin arrived in England, and scientists literally argued about whether it was real or fake. They tried to cut the bill off with scissors, looking for stitches because they couldn't believe that a mammal could have a bill like a duck. The famous Scottish naturalist George Shaw, who first described the platypus scientifically, wrote in his notes that nature herself seems to have played a trick by creating such an impossible animal. German scientist Johann Blumenbach gave it the scientific name Ornithorhynchus paradoxus, which literally means paradoxical bird face. For decades, scientists refused to believe platypuses existed until live ones were brought to Europe and people could see them swimming in aquariums. The confusion was so deep that some textbooks for 50 years said the platypus might be an elaborate hoax. Even Charles Darwin, when reading about the platypus in the 1830s, called it one of the most extraordinary animals in the world, and said it was evidence that nature was far stranger than anyone imagined. Today we know the platypus is completely real and has been living in Australian rivers for at least 100 million years, surviving when dinosaurs roamed the earth. The joke was actually on the scientists who didn't believe in something so wonderful just because it didn't fit their ideas about what mammals should look like. The platypus teaches us that we should never assume we know everything about nature. There are always surprises waiting in remote rivers and wild places. The platypus has a radar in its bill that finds food in dark water, even with eyes closed. This is one of the most incredible superpowers in the animal kingdom, and it works in a way that technology humans invented still can't perfectly copy. Inside the platypus bill are thousands of tiny sensors called electroreceptors, about 40,000 of them arranged in rows along the bill. These sensors detect the tiny electrical signals that every living creature makes when its muscles move. When a shrimp crawls along the river bottom, When a worm wiggles, when a small fish swims past, they all create electrical fields that the platypus feels instantly. The bill also has mechanoreceptors that sense pressure changes in the water, so the platypus knows exactly where the prey is moving. This combination is called electrolocation, and it's so precise that the platypus can tell the difference between a live shrimp and a dead one, or even between different species of prey. Researchers at the University of Heidelberg in Germany spent years studying this and discovered that the platypus brain has a special area devoted entirely to processing these electrical signals. It's like having a dedicated computer for radar. The amazing thing is that the platypus uses this radar while its eyes, ears, and nose are completely closed underwater. It swims with its head slightly tilted forward, bill sweeping side to side, reading the electrical map of the river bottom. When it detects prey, it snaps its jaws together instantly, catching the food before it can escape. This radar system is so sensitive that the platypus can find food in water that's completely black with mud, where visibility is zero. It's like having X-ray vision but for electricity instead of light, and it's why the platypus never goes hungry, even in the murkiest rivers. It is poisonous. The males have a spur on their back legs that releases strong venom. Most people think of the platypus as a cute, harmless animal, but the males carry a hidden weapon that can cause excruciating pain to anyone who gets stung. On the inside of each hind leg spur, hollow inside, runs a tube connected to a venom gland in the male's thigh. When the platypus feels threatened or is fighting another male for a mate, it kicks with its back legs and drives the spur into the attacker's skin, injecting venom deep into the wound. The venom is not strong enough to kill a human, but the pain is so terrible that it's been described as unbearable and worse than a scorpion sting. What makes this venom especially strange is that the pain doesn't go away after as like normal animal stings. It can last for weeks or even months, and painkillers often don't work. The pain is so severe that people who have been stung have cried uncontrollably, unable to move the injured limb, and some even develop long-term sensitivity, where even a gentle touch causes agony. Scientists studying this venom discovered it contains at least 80 different proteins, many of which are unique and found nowhere else in nature. Some of these proteins are similar to venom from snakes and sea anemones, showing that the platypus evolved poison independently but landed on similar chemical solutions. The venom is strongest during breeding season when males fight fiercely, and it grows weaker as the male ages. Female platypuses have spurs too when they're babies, but they fall off by the time the females are 1 year old, so only adult males remain dangerous. This makes the platypus one of only 2 venomous mammals in the world, the other being the short-tailed shrew. The fact that a cuddly-looking animal with a soft bill and furry body carries such a potent weapon is one of nature's best surprises. The platypus has no teeth. It uses small stones in its mouth to grind its food. When baby platypuses are very young, they have tiny temporary teeth that grow in, but these fall out before they even leave the nest. As an adult, the platypus has completely smooth gums with no teeth at all, not even tooth roots hidden in the jaw. Instead, the platypus fills its mouth with gravel and small stones it collects from the river bottom while hunting. When it catches shrimp, worms, insect larvae, or small fish, it crushes them between these stones and its tough gum pads, grinding them into a paste it can swallow. The stones stay in the mouth for a long time, worn down gradually by crushing food, and eventually smaller pieces get swallowed or spit out while the platypus gets new stones to replace them. This is a very unusual way to eat that scientists still don't fully understand. Most animals either have teeth throughout their lives or lose baby teeth and get adult teeth, but the platypus just uses rocks like a built-in food processor. Researchers examining the stomachs of wild platypuses often find hundreds of small stones mixed with food, showing how important this grinding method is. The stones are usually smooth and rounded from being in the river, about the size of peas or small beans, and they fit perfectly in the platypus's mouth. When a platypus eats on land, you can sometimes see it chewing vigorously, moving its jaw in a circular motion, grinding the stones against the food paste. This toothless feeding method means the Platypus can eat as it grows without ever needing to change teeth or worry about cavities or tooth decay. It's a simple, elegant solution that has worked for millions of years, proving you don't need complicated teeth to survive. You just need the right tools and a clever way to use them. The Platypus shows us that nature finds many different paths to the same goal, and sometimes the simplest solution is the best one. Its bill is soft and sensitive, not hard like a bird's bill, and this is something almost nobody expects when thinking about a platypus. When you imagine a duck bill, you think of that hard bill bouncing against things, right? But the platypus bill is completely different. It's soft like rubber, covered with millions of tiny nerve endings that feel the slightest movement in the water. It's as if the bill were a giant hand that feels everything around it. Scientists call this electroreception, but you can simply think of it as a superpower to feel electricity. When a shrimp or small fish moves in the water, its muscles create a small electrical current, and the platypus bill feels it instantly. That's why it can hunt in dark, murky water where it can't see anything. Its eyes barely work underwater, but the bill does all the work. The bill is paddle-shaped, about 5 centimeters wide, and covered with a gelatinous skin that has no fur. This allows the nerve endings to detect everything with incredible precision. Some researchers discovered that the platypus can distinguish between different types of prey just by the type of electrical signal they emit. It's as if it has a natural radar showing what it's eating before even biting. And the most impressive part, the bill has no bones inside. It's practically flesh and nerves working together as a complete sensory organ. When the platypus swims, it keeps the bill slightly tilted forward, scanning the water as if reading an invisible map. The bill is so sensitive that it can feel the texture of the river bottom, detecting small changes in pressure and movement that other animals would never notice. Even water flowing over pebbles creates tiny vibrations that the platypus senses clearly. This soft bill is the key to everything the platypus does: hunting, exploring, navigating, and understanding its world without relying on sight. The platypus sees very poorly in water, but its bill feels the electricity of shrimp and fish muscles. And this is the reason it can survive in dark and muddy rivers. If you put a platypus in a clean, crystal clear pool, it would probably get confused, because its eyes were made to work more on land than in water. The platypus eyes are tiny, almost like black dots hidden in the fur on the side of its head, and they close completely when the animal enters the water. But this is not a problem, because it doesn't need to see. What it needs is to feel, and the bill does this better than any vision could. Every small muscle of a shrimp, worm, or tiny fish emits a fraction of electricity when it contracts. And the platypus bill detects this, as if it were a bright beacon in the dark. Scientists at the University of Adelaide spent years studying this and found that the platypus brain processes these electrical signals faster than almost any other animal processes sensory information. The brain has a special area dedicated entirely to the bill, taking up about 2/3 of the entire sensory cortex, which is enormous compared to other mammals. This means the platypus literally thinks with its bill, processing the world through electrical sensation rather than visual images. When swimming underwater, the platypus closes its eyes, ears, and nostrils, becoming completely sealed from the outside world except for the bill. It's like diving into a dark cave blindfolded, but the bill creates a complete picture of what's around. The platypus can tell how far away prey is, what direction it's moving, and how big it is, all from the electrical signature alone. This is why murky rivers that would be impossible for other hunters become the platypus's perfect hunting ground, where it has no competition and can feast without trouble. The platypus is one of the strangest animals science has ever discovered. It looks like a mix of several birds and animals. When you list all the weird features together, it seems impossible that one creature could have them all. The platypus has a bill like a duck, fur like an otter, a tail like a beaver, webbed feet like a frog, lays eggs like a reptile, nurses babies like a mammal, is poisonous like a snake, and swims like a seal. It's as if nature took pieces from different animals and assembled them into one working creature. Early naturalists couldn't believe such an animal existed because it broke every rule they knew about classification. Mammals don't lay eggs. Animals with bills don't have fur, and harmless-looking creatures don't carry venom. The platypus does all of these things at once, defying logical categories. Even today, when biologists have studied thousands of species, the platypus remains unique. There is no other animal quite like it on Earth. Its DNA shows that it has genes from mammals, birds, and reptiles all mixed together, as if it carries ancient memories from when these groups were still connected. Scientists who sequenced the Platypus genome found it has 10 sex chromosomes instead of the usual 2 that humans have, arranged in a complex chain that determines gender in a way nobody fully understands yet. The platypus also has clues about how mammals evolved from reptile-like ancestors, because it keeps features that other mammals lost millions of years ago. It's like a living fossil, a bridge between different eras of evolution, showing us what ancient animals might have looked like. This strange combination makes the platypus not just unusual, but important for understanding how life on Earth developed over hundreds of millions of years. Every time scientists think they understand the platypus completely, they discover something new that makes it even stranger. The platypus has brown fur that gets lighter on the belly, like a camouflage vest. This coloring is not random. It's a perfect disguise that helps the platypus hide from predators both above and below the water. When a predator looks down from above, like a hawk or large bird, the platypus's dark brown back blends with the dark river bottom and muddy water. When something looks up from below, like a fish or shark, the lighter cream-colored belly matches the bright surface and sky. This is called countershading, and it's one of the most common camouflage patterns in nature, found in sharks, penguins, deer, and many other animals. But the platypus's fur is special because it's also incredibly dense and waterproof, with about 90,000 hairs per square centimeter, which is more than almost any other mammal. These hairs trap a layer of air next to the skin, keeping the platypus warm and dry even when swimming in cold water for hours. The fur is so effective that the platypus can stay in water near freezing without getting hypothermia, and when it emerges, it just shakes off and the water rolls right off like beads on a waxed surface. The fur has 2 layers, a thick, soft undercoat for warmth and longer guard hairs on top that repel water and protect the undercoat. The color gradient from dark brown on top to light cream on the bottom is smooth and natural, with no sharp lines, making the camouflage even more effective. Baby platypuses have softer, fluffier fur that's slightly lighter overall, and it darkens as they grow into adults. The fur also has a slightly oily texture because the platypus spreads oil from glands near its tail over its body while grooming, which maintains the waterproof quality. When the platypus climbs out of the water to rest in its burrow, it spends time licking and smoothing its fur, keeping it in perfect condition. This careful maintenance is essential because wet, matted fur would lose its insulating ability, and the platypus could get dangerously cold. The beautiful brown coat is not just decoration. It's a survival tool that keeps the platypus hidden, warm, and dry in its river home. Its feet are webbed like a duck's, perfect for swimming. The platypus has 4 feet, but the front feet are much more important for swimming than the back feet. The front feet have large webs of skin connecting the toes, spreading out like oars when the platypus pushes through water. When the platypus swims, it uses mainly its front feet to paddle, making strong strokes that propel it forward with surprising speed. The webbing on the front feet extends well beyond the toes, creating a large surface area that pushes against the water efficiently. When the platypus walks on land, something amazing happens. It folds the webbing back, revealing sharp claws underneath that it uses for digging. This folding mechanism is automatic and controlled by muscles in the foot, so the platypus instantly switches from swimming mode to walking mode without thinking about it. The back feet are also webbed, but they work differently. Instead of paddling, the back feet and tail work together as a rudder, steering the platypus left or right, up or down, as it swims. The platypus can make sharp turns underwater, dive straight down, or surface quickly, all by adjusting the angle of its back feet and tail. This division of labor between front and back feet makes the platypus an incredibly agile swimmer, able to change direction instantly when chasing prey or avoiding danger. The feet are also sensitive, with nerve endings that help the platypus feel the texture of the river bottom when it's walking along the bottom hunting. The claws on the front feet are strong and curved, perfect for digging burrows into riverbanks, tearing apart rotting logs to find insects, or defending against attackers. When the platypus is very young, the webbing is already present, and baby platypuses start swimming within days of leaving the nest, showing that this adaptation is built in from birth. The webbed feet are one of the key features that make the platypus so successful in its aquatic environment, allowing it to cover large distances, hunt efficiently, and escape quickly when needed. The platypus tail is flat and similar to a beaver's. It helps swim and store fat. At first glance, the tail looks like just another part of the body, something that trails behind as the platypus swims, but it's actually one of the most important tools the animal has. The tail is broad and flattened from top to bottom, covered in the same brown fur as the body, and it's about 15 to 20 centimeters long in adult platypuses. When swimming, the tail moves side to side along with the back feet, helping to steer and stabilize the platypus as it moves through water. If the platypus wants to turn sharply left, it pushes its tail to the right, and vice versa, just like a boat rudder. But the tail does something even more clever than steering. It stores fat, like a camel's hump. When food is abundant, the platypus eats extra and stores the energy as fat in its tail, making the tail swell up and become thicker and rounder. When food is scarce, like during droughts or cold winters when there are fewer shrimp and worms in the river, the platypus lives off this stored fat, slowly using it up and watching its tail shrink. This is essential because the platypus needs to eat about 20% of its body weight every day, and if it couldn't store extra energy for bad times, it would starve quickly. Researchers measuring wild platypuses found that the tail can vary in thickness by up to 50% depending on the season and food availability, swelling fat in autumn when food is plentiful and shrinking in spring when resources are low. The tail also helps the platypus when it's sitting on land, acting as a third leg that supports its weight when it sits upright to groom or rest. When the platypus curls up to sleep in its burrow, it wraps its tail around its body like a blanket, adding extra warmth and protection. The fur on the tail is dense and waterproof like the rest of the body, and the tail is flexible enough to bend and twist without discomfort. This remarkable tail is a perfect example of how evolution creates tools that do multiple jobs: steering while swimming, storing energy for survival, supporting weight on land, and keeping warm while sleeping. The platypus sleeps in burrows it digs itself on river banks. After spending hours hunting and swimming in the river, the platypus needs a safe place to rest and sleep, and it builds this home completely by itself. The burrow starts at the water's edge, usually hidden behind grass, bushes, or fallen branches so predators can't easily see it. The platypus uses its strong front claws to dig into the soft soil of the bank, pushing dirt backward with its feet and carrying it out in its mouth until there's a tunnel wide enough for its body. The tunnel can go straight in for a short distance, but often it curves upward or sideways to avoid water seeping in, and it can be anywhere from 1 to 3 meters long, sometimes even longer in soft soil. At the end of the tunnel, there's a nesting chamber that's slightly larger than the rest, lined with dry grass, leaves, and twigs that the platypus drags in to make a soft bed. This chamber is where the platypus sleeps during the day, curled up in a ball with its tail wrapped around its body for warmth. The entrance to the burrow is usually underwater, hidden below the surface, so predators looking along the bank can't find it. When the platypus wants to leave, it swims through the underwater entrance, emerges into the tunnel, and pushes its way out to the river. The female platypus makes the burrow even more secure when she has babies, adding extra walls of packed dirt inside the tunnel that block the way if a predator tries to dig in. These walls are so thick that it takes a long time to break through, giving the babies time to hide deeper in the chamber. The platypus keeps the burrow clean, carrying out waste and old nesting material, and it will shine the tunnel if rain damages it or if the soil collapses. A single platypus can have several burrows along a stretch of river, using different ones on different nights, which makes it harder for predators to learn where to find it. These burrows are quiet, dark, and safe places where the platypus can rest deeply without worrying about danger. And they're essential for the animal's survival and ability to recover energy after hunting. It can stay underwater for up to 2 minutes without coming up for air. This seems like a very long time, especially for such a small animal that weighs only about 1 to 2 kilograms. When the platypus dives into the river to hunt, it takes a deep breath first, filling its lungs completely, then closes its nostrils tightly with special muscles that seal them shut. At the same time, it closes its eyes, ears, and webbing folds back on its feet, becoming completely sealed from the water except for its sensitive bill. Once underwater, the platypus's heart rate slows down dramatically, dropping from about 150 beats per minute on the surface to as low as 60 beats per minute, which conserves oxygen and lets it stay down longer. The blood flow also changes, with more oxygen going to the brain and heart, and less going to muscles and skin, prioritizing the most important organs. While hunting, the platypus searches the river bottom, sweeping its bill side to side, feeling for prey with its electroreceptors, searching for shrimp, worms, and insect larvae. Most hunting dives last about 30 to 45 seconds, which is enough time to find and catch several pieces of food. But the platypus can push much longer when needed. The record for the longest dive is around 2 minutes, and during this time the platypus can cover a distance of up to 50 meters underwater, searching multiple spots along the river bottom. When the oxygen gets low and the platypus needs to breathe, it swims quickly to the surface, breaks through with its head, takes a quick breath, and may dive again immediately if it's still hunting. The platypus doesn't get the bends like humans do when surfacing too quickly from deep water, because its body is adapted to handle these rapid pressure changes without problems. This diving ability is so good that the platypus can spend up to 12 hours per day in the water, hunting continuously, only coming up briefly to breathe. Researchers timing wild platypuses found that they make about 80 to 100 dives per hour during active hunting, showing how efficient and comfortable they are underwater. This amazing breath-holding ability is one of the reasons the platypus is such a successful hunter, able to explore places other animals can't reach and spend long periods searching for food. Platypus babies are born from a tiny egg, the size of a bean. This is one of the most surprising facts about the platypus, because almost all mammals give birth to live babies, but the platypus mom lays an egg and waits for the baby to hatch inside. The egg is incredibly small, only about 11 millimeters in diameter, roughly the size of a navy bean or a small grape, and it has a soft, leathery shell like a reptile egg, not a hard shell like a chicken egg. The shell is flexible and slightly sticky, so it sticks to the mother's body when she lays it. The female platypus, Tunton, lays 1 to 3 eggs per clutch, but 2 is the most common number, and she lays them in a lined nest chamber at the end of her burrow. After laying the eggs, she curls her body around them, wrapping her tail over the top and holding them against her warm belly for about 10 days. During this incubation period, the mother doesn't leave the nest to hunt, so she must have stored enough fat in her tail and body to survive without eating. The eggs are kept at a constant temperature of about 32 degrees Celsius, slightly warmer than human body temperature, which is perfect for the developing embryo inside. Inside the egg, the baby platypus grows slowly, developing fur, a bill, webbed feet, and all its organs, just like a mammal baby would grow inside a womb. When the baby is ready to hatch, it uses a small egg tooth on its snout to crack the shell from the inside, pushing and scratching until a hole appears and it can wiggle out. The hatchling is tiny, blind, hairless, and completely helpless, about the size of a grape, and it depends entirely on its mother for warmth and food. The mother doesn't have nipples, so milk sweats out through special patches on her belly skin, and the baby licks it up from the fur. The baby stays in the nest for about 3 to 4 months, growing fur, developing its bill, learning to swim, and getting stronger until it's ready to leave the burrow and hunt on its own. This egg-laying method is ancient and has been around for over 200 million years, showing that the platypus keeps traditions that other mammals abandoned long ago. The mother platypus doesn't have nipples. Babies lick milk that flows from her belly skin. This is one of the strangest facts about the platypus, and it's something that makes it completely different from almost every other mammal you know. Dogs, cats, cows, humans, all of them have nipples that babies suck on to get milk, but the platypus mom has no nipples at all. Instead, she has special milk patches on her belly, areas of skin with tiny openings that let milk seep out when the babies need to eat. The milk comes from mammary glands inside the belly, just like other mammals. But instead of traveling through a nipple, it spreads across the skin surface and forms little droplets that the babies can lick off. The mother platypus lies on her back with her belly exposed, and the babies crawl onto her fur, finding the milk patches and licking up the rich, creamy milk with their tongues. The milk is very nutritious, packed with proteins, fats, and antibodies that protect the babies from infections and help them grow strong. It's sweeter than cow's milk and has special compounds that kill bacteria, which is important because the babies are helping in a dirty burrow and could easily get sick. The mother produces milk continuously while the babies are nursing, and she can adjust how much milk she produces depending on how many babies she has and how old they are. As the babies grow bigger and need more food, the mother produces more milk, and as they get older and start eating solid food, the milk production decreases. The babies nurse for about 3 to 4 months, and during this time they grow from tiny bean-sized hatchlings to fully furred, swimming juveniles that weigh up to 500 grams. When the babies are very young, they can't regulate their body temperature, so the mother curls around them constantly, keeping them warm while they sleep and eat. The milk patches are located on the lower belly, and the babies learn to find them quickly, even though they're born blind and don't have good senses yet. This nursing method is ancient and represents a transitional form between reptiles, which don't produce milk at all, and modern mammals, which have fully developed nipples. It's a beautiful reminder that evolution doesn't erase old methods completely. Sometimes it keeps them alongside new ones, and the platypus shows us this ancient way of feeding babies that still works perfectly. The platypus eats only small aquatic creatures, shrimp, worms, water insects. Even though the platypus is a mammal and mammals are often thought of as eating meat or plants, the platypus has a very specific diet that stays entirely underwater. It never goes to land to find food, never eats leaves, grass, fruits, or seeds, and never hunts on shore. Everything it eats lives in the river, and the platypus spends hours every day searching the river bottom for these small creatures. Shrimp are the platypus's favorite food, especially the small freshwater crayfish that hide under rocks and in muddy patches. The platypus also eats aquatic worms that wiggle through the sediment, insect larvae that live in the water, small fish that swim near the bottom, and even snails that crawl slowly along rocks. When hunting, the platypus sweeps its bill side to side along the river bottom, feeling for movement with its electroreceptors, and when it detects prey, it snaps its jaws together and scoops the food into its mouth along with some gravel. The platypus collects food in pouches on the sides of its mouth, storing it temporarily while it continues hunting, then swims to the surface to chew and swallow everything at once. This way of eating is efficient because the platypus can gather many small pieces of food during one dive, then eat them all when it surfaces, rather than swallowing each piece immediately. The platypus needs to eat about 20% of its body weight every day, which means a 1.5 platypus needs to find and eat about 300 grams of food daily. This is a lot of effort, and the platypus spends 4 to 6 hours per day hunting just to meet this requirement. When food is scarce, like during droughts when rivers shrink and dry up, the platypus has to hunt longer and search farther, using the fat stored in its tail to survive until conditions improve. The platypus doesn't eat anything poisonous or dangerous, and it seems to instinctively know which creatures are safe to eat, avoiding things that might hurt it. This specialized diet means the platypus is completely dependent on healthy rivers with plenty of aquatic life, and if the water becomes polluted or the shrimp and worms disappear, the platypus cannot survive. This makes the platypus an indicator species, showing us whether a river ecosystem is healthy or in trouble, because when platypuses are thriving, it means the whole river is thriving too. It is active mainly at dawn and dusk, when light is weak. This timing is not random. It's a carefully evolved strategy that helps the platypus hunt better and avoid danger. During the middle of the day when the sun is high and bright, the platypus stays hidden in its burrow, sleeping quietly and conserving energy. Similarly, in the middle of the night when it's completely dark and cold, the platypus also rests rather than hunting. But at dawn, just as the sun is rising and creating soft golden light, and at dusk, when the sun is setting and colors fade into twilight, the platypus comes out and becomes very active. This time period is called crepuscular, and it's shared by many animals including deer, rabbits, and some cats. The reason the platypus chooses this time is that its electroreception works best in low light conditions. When the sun is bright, the water's surface reflects light and creates glare that interferes with the platypus's sensitive bill, making it harder to detect prey. When it's completely dark, the platypus can still hunt using its electroreceptors, but it's colder and the prey is less active, so hunting is less efficient. At dawn and dusk, the light is gentle, the water is calm, and prey animals are active and moving around, creating electrical signals that the platypus can easily detect. During these hours, the platypus hunts continuously, diving over and over, searching the river bottom, catching shrimp and worms, and filling its stomach. The platypus can hunt for several hours during dawn, then rest during the day, then hunt again for several hours during dusk, getting most of its food in these two periods. This schedule also helps the platypus avoid predators, because many dangerous animals like birds of prey are most active during bright daylight, while other predators, like foxes, are more active at night. By being active during twilight, the platypus puts itself in a sweet spot, where it's less visible to predators and more successful at hunting. This timing is built into the platypus's body clock, and even if you kept a platypus in a lab with artificial light, it would still try to be active at dawn and dusk, showing that this rhythm is genetic and deeply programmed. The male platypus is larger than the female. He can weigh up to 2.5 kg. This size difference is called sexual dimorphism, and it's common in many animals where males are bigger than females. But the platypus has a particularly noticeable difference. A male platypus typically weighs between 1.7 and 2.5 kilograms and measures about 50 to 60 centimeters from head to tail, while a female platypus weighs between 0.7 and 1.6 kilograms and measures about 40 to 50 centimeters. The male is about 25 to 30% larger than the female, and this difference is visible even when you look at them from a distance. The male's bill is larger and broader, his webbed feet are bigger, his tail is thicker with more fat storage, and his body is more muscular overall. This size advantage is important because male platypuses compete fiercely with each other during breeding season, and larger males are more likely to win fights and mate with females. The size difference also relates to the male's venom spur. Larger males have bigger, stronger spurs that can deliver more venom and cause more damage during fights. Interestingly, the size difference becomes more pronounced as platypuses age, with older males growing much larger than younger males, while females stay relatively similar in size throughout their lives. When researchers measure wild platypuses, they can often tell the sex just by looking at the size, without needing to check for spurs or other reproductive features. The larger size means males need to eat more food than females, A male might need 350 grams of food per day while a female only needs 250 grams. This puts more pressure on males to hunt successfully, and they often range over larger areas of river to find enough food. The size difference is also visible in the bones. Male platypus bones are thicker and denser, especially in the legs and arms, reflecting their more active and aggressive lifestyle. Even baby platypuses show small size differences early on, with males growing slightly faster than females from the beginning. This size difference is one of the few ways scientists can quickly identify male and female platypuses in the wild. And it's a clear example of how evolution shapes different body sizes for different roles in reproduction and survival. Its heart beats slower when it swims, to save oxygen. This is one of the most remarkable adaptations the platypus has, and it's the key to understanding how such a small animal can stay underwater for so long. When the platypus is resting on land or swimming at the surface, its heart beats at about 130 to 150 times per minute, which is normal for a small mammal of its size. But the moment the platypus dives underwater to hunt, something amazing happens. Its heart rate drops dramatically, sometimes falling to as low as 60 beats per minute, which is less than half the normal rate. This is called bradycardia, and it's a survival mechanism that conserves oxygen by reducing how much blood the heart pumps and how much oxygen the body uses. When the heart beats slower, less oxygen is delivered to muscles and non-essential organs, so the body enters a kind of energy-saving mode. The brain and heart continue to receive plenty of oxygen because blood flow is redirected away from less important areas like skin, digestive system, and limbs, focusing instead on the organs that must keep working. This oxygen conservation is essential because the platypus has only one breath of air stored in its lungs when it dives, and it needs that oxygen to last for up to 2 minutes while hunting. The heart rate change happens automatically and immediately, controlled by the nervous system without the platypus needing to think about it. When the platypus surfaces and takes a breath, its heart rate quickly returns to normal, sometimes within seconds, ready for the next dive. Researchers studying this found that the platypus's heart is specially adapted to handle these rapid changes, with strong muscles that can slow down and speed up without damage or fatigue. This adaptation is similar to what seals and whales do, even though platypuses are much smaller and not closely related to these marine mammals, showing that evolution can find similar solutions to the same problem in different animals. The heart rate change also helps the platypus stay calm and focused while hunting, because the slower heart rate reduces stress and keeps the body relaxed. This is why the platypus can hunt for hours without getting tired, making dive after dive with consistent energy and focus. The heart adaptation is one of the hidden secrets that makes the platypus such a successful aquatic hunter, working quietly in the background to keep the animal alive and productive underwater. The platypus lives only in Australia and Tasmania, an island near Australia. This limited range is one of the strangest things about the platypus, because such an unusual and remarkable animal exists nowhere else on the entire planet. The platypus is found in eastern Australia, from the far north of Queensland down through New South Wales and Victoria, and also on the island of Tasmania, which sits about 200 kilometers south of the Australian mainland. Within this range, the platypus lives in rivers, lakes, and streams that have slow, moving water, muddy bottoms, and banks soft enough to dig burrows. The platypus doesn't live in the ocean, doesn't live in fast mountain streams, and doesn't live in dry desert areas. It needs specific conditions to survive. In Tasmania, the platypus is especially common because the island has many clean, cold rivers with plenty of shrimp and worms, and fewer predators than the mainland. The platypus range has shrunk over the past 100 years because of habitat loss, pollution, and climate change. And now platypuses are found in only about 50% of the areas where they lived in the 1900s. Some populations have disappeared completely from rivers that were dammed or polluted, and scientists are worried that the platypus might become endangered if these trends continue. The platypus once hunted extensively for its fur, which was soft and beautiful, and thousands were killed every year for the fur trade until hunting was banned in the early 1900s. Today, the platypus is protected by law in Australia, and it's considered a symbol of Australian wildlife, appearing on coins, stamps, and tourist materials. The limited range makes the platypus vulnerable, because if something bad happens to Australian rivers, like a major drought, pollution event, or disease, the entire species could be threatened. This is why conservationists work hard to protect platypus habitat, keep rivers clean, and maintain healthy populations of shrimp and worms that the platypus eats. The fact that such an amazing animal exists only in one country is both wonderful and worrying. Wonderful because it's unique to Australia, but worrying because it means the platypus's entire future depends on what happens in this one place. Australians take pride in the platypus and recognize it as one of their most special natural treasures, something that belongs to them and that they must protect for future generations. It builds walls of dirt inside the burrow to protect itself from predators. This is one of the most impressive construction skills the platypus has, and it shows that even though the platypus has a small brain, it's very smart when it comes to survival. When a female platypus is expecting babies or has young ones in the nest, she doesn't just dig a simple tunnel and leave it open. She creates a complex system of barriers that make it extremely difficult for predators to reach her babies. After digging the main tunnel, which can be 1 to 3 meters long, the platypus builds one or more walls inside the tunnel by packing dirt tightly with her body and paws. These walls are about 30 to 50 centimeters thick, made of soil that's been wetted and compressed until it's as hard as concrete. The walls completely block the tunnel, so a predator like a fox, snake, or dog that enters the burrow entrance can't get past them. The only way through is for the platypus to dig through from the inside, which she can do quickly when she needs to leave, but a predator would take hours to break through. The female typically builds 2 or 3 of these walls, spaced several meters apart, creating multiple defensive barriers that slow down any attacker. Between the walls, there are small side chambers where the platypus can hide if a predator gets past one wall, giving her more time to escape or defend her babies. The walls are positioned strategically, with the first one about halfway down the tunnel, and additional ones closer to the nesting chamber where the babies are. When the babies are very young and defenseless, the mother stays behind the innermost wall, curled around her offspring, ready to fight or flee if necessary. The dirt used for the walls is chosen carefully. The platypus prefers soil that's moist and sticky, which packs together better and doesn't crumble easily. These walls are rebuilt and repaired regularly, especially after rain, or if the mother senses that the burrow has been disturbed. Male platypuses also build walls in their burrows, but not as elaborate as those built by mothers with babies, showing that this behavior is strongest when there's something precious to protect. This defensive construction is remarkable because the platypus doesn't have any tools. It uses only its body, paws, and snout to pack and shape the dirt into protective barriers. It's a testament to the platypus's intelligence and instinct for survival, showing that even gentle-looking animals have sophisticated strategies for protecting their young. The platypus drinks water by swallowing small gulps while swimming. This might seem strange because we usually think of animals drinking by stopping at a water source and lapping or sucking. But the platypus has evolved a more efficient method that lets it stay in hunting mode without interruption, while swimming along the river bottom hunting for shrimp and worms. The platypus periodically opens its mouth slightly and takes in small amounts of water along with the air it needs to breathe. As the water enters the mouth, the platypus closes its jaws and uses its tongue to push the water toward the throat while letting excess water flow out through the sides of the bill. This swallowing action is quick and automatic, happening in just a second or two, and the platypus can do it multiple times during a single hunting session without stopping or surfacing. The platypus needs to drink about 50 milliliters of water per day, which is roughly the amount in a small drinking glass, and it gets most of this water while swimming rather than stopping to drink separately. This method is especially important because the platypus spends so much time underwater hunting, up to 12 hours per day, and stopping frequently to drink would waste time and energy. The water the platypus drinks is fresh river water, not salty or polluted, and it seems to prefer water that's cool and clean. When the platypus surfaces to breathe after a dive, it often takes a quick drink at the same time, opening its mouth slightly as it breaks the surface and swallowing before diving again. This dual-purpose action of breathing and drinking together is efficient and shows how the platypus has evolved to do multiple things at once. Baby platypuses learn this behavior quickly, and even young platypuses, just a few weeks old, can drink while swimming without choking or swallowing too much water. The platypus's throat and esophagus are specially adapted to separate water from air and food, so it can drink without interfering with breathing or eating. This drinking method is unique among mammals. Most mammals stop to drink, but the platypus drinks while doing its main activity, just like it hunts with its eyes closed and eats while swimming. It's another example of how the platypus has found clever solutions to everyday problems, adapting its body and behavior to make life in the river easier and more efficient. Its eyes are tiny, almost hidden in the fur on its head. When you look at a platypus closely, you might not even notice its eyes at first because they're so small and well camouflaged. The eyes are located on the sides of the head, just above the level of the bill, and they're about the size of small peas, measuring only 3 to 4 millimeters in diameter. They're completely covered by fur when the platypus is on land, with only a small opening allowing light to enter. And when the platypus goes underwater, special muscles close the eyes completely, sealing them shut with a protective membrane. The eyes point slightly outward, giving the platypus a wide field of view, but the actual vision is quite poor, especially underwater where everything appears blurry and indistinct. Scientists have tested platypus vision and found that they can see shapes and movement at close range, maybe 10 to 20 centimeters away, but they can't see fine details or colors very well. The eyes are most useful on land, where the platypus can see predators approaching from a distance and navigate around obstacles while walking to its burrow. Underwater, the eyes are essentially useless, which is why the platypus closes them completely and relies entirely on its bill's electroreceptors to navigate and hunt. The tiny size of the eyes is actually an advantage because it reduces the surface area that could be injured or infected, and it minimizes drag when swimming. The eyes have a simple structure with a lens, retina, and optic nerve, but they lack many of the complex features that animals with good vision have, like color-sensitive cones or a fovea for sharp central vision. The retina is mostly made of rod cells, which are good for detecting movement in low light, but don't provide sharp images or color information. Despite being nearly blind, the platypus manages just fine because its other senses, especially the bill's electroreception, are so much more useful in its aquatic environment. This is a great example of evolution prioritizing the senses that matter most. If you can feel your prey with your bill, you don't need excellent eyesight. The tiny eyes are also fragile, so the platypus protects them by keeping them closed most of the time and only opening them when it's on land and needs to see. Even though the eyes are small and not very useful, they're still important for the platypus's overall awareness and survival, providing basic visual information that complements the much more detailed information from the bill. The male platypus venom hurts very much, but doesn't kill humans. It only causes intense pain for weeks. This is one of the most misunderstood facts about the platypus, because people hear venomous mammal and immediately think of danger and death, but the reality is very different. When a male platypus stings a human with its hind leg spur, the pain is so severe and immediate that most people describe it as the worst pain they've ever experienced. Worse than a bee sting, wasp sting, or even a snake bite. The venom contains powerful chemicals called surfactants that attack nerve endings and cause intense burning pain that starts within seconds of the sting and doesn't go away. The pain is so bad that people have cried uncontrollably, collapsed to the ground, and been unable to use the injured limb for days or weeks. What makes the platypus venom especially strange is that it doesn't respond well to normal painkillers. Morphine, codeine, ibuprofen, and other common pain medications often have little effect on the pain. The pain can last for weeks or even months, gradually fading but never completely disappearing for some people, and the injured area can remain sensitive to touch for a long time. Despite all this terrible pain, the venom is not dangerous to humans in terms of causing death or permanent damage. It doesn't destroy tissue, cause organ failure, or lead to death. It just causes extreme pain. The venom is much more dangerous to small animals like dogs, which can die from a platypus sting if they're bitten on the nose or mouth, and to other platypuses, especially males fighting during breeding season. Scientists studying the venom have identified at least 80 different proteins in it, many of which are unique and not found in any other animal's venom. And some of these proteins are still being studied to understand how they cause such intense pain. The venom is strongest during breeding season, which happens in spring, and males become very aggressive and territorial, using their spurs to fight other males and defend their mates. The good news is that platypus stings on humans are very rare because platypuses are shy and avoid people, and they only sting when they're caught, threatened, or cornered. If you never try to catch or handle a wild platypus, you'll never get stung, and even wildlife researchers who work with platypuses regularly rarely get stung because they know how to handle the animals safely. The venom is a defense mechanism and a weapon for fighting other males, not a tool for hunting or attacking humans. And the platypus has no interest in using it on anything larger than another platypus or small predator. Babies stay in the burrow for 3-4 months until they have fur and know how to swim. This is a long time for a baby mammal to stay with its mother, and it reflects how helpless platypus babies are when they're born and how much they need to learn before they can survive on their own. When the baby platypuses hatch from their eggs, they're tiny, blind, hairless, and completely unable to move around or feed themselves, looking more like pink worms than animals. They're about the size of a grape, weighing only 5 to 10 grams, and they're so fragile that they could easily die if they're not kept warm and fed regularly. The mother stays with them constantly during the first few weeks, curling around them to keep them warm, licking them clean, and feeding them milk from her belly patches whenever they need it. During the first month, the babies grow rapidly, developing soft downy fur, opening their eyes for the first time at about 3 weeks, and starting to move around the nesting chamber. At about 6 weeks, the babies start getting their adult fur, which is denser and water resistant, and they begin exploring the tunnel, practicing walking and climbing. Around 8 to 10 weeks, the mother starts taking the babies out of the burrow for short trips to the water, where they learn to swim and practice using their bill to feel for prey. This is a critical period because the babies must learn how to use their electroreceptors, how to hunt, how to dive, and how to hold their breath underwater, and they learn by watching their mother and practicing themselves. By 12 weeks, the babies are swimming well, hunting for small shrimp and worms, and eating solid food, though they still nurse occasionally. At 14 to 16 weeks, the babies are fully independent, able to hunt, swim, dive, and survive on their own, and they leave the burrow to find their own territory along the river. The mother doesn't push them out or stop feeding them. They simply outgrow the need for her care and wander off on their own, sometimes traveling several kilometers to find a new place to live. During these 3-4 months, the mother invests enormous energy in raising her babies, not eating much herself while they're young and dependent, and risking her own survival to protect them from predators. This long period of parental care is rare among mammals that lay eggs, and it shows how important it is for platypus babies to learn complex skills before they can survive in the wild. Baby platypuses that don't learn to hunt properly or don't develop strong swimming skills are unlikely to survive their first year. So this learning period is essential for the species' survival. The platypus has 5 senses, but uses its bill's touch more than vision. Everyone learns in school that humans and animals have 5 senses: sight, hearing, smell, taste, and touch. And the platypus has all of these too, but it doesn't use them equally. For the platypus, the most important sense is touch, specifically the touch sensation from its bill, which is so sensitive and detailed that it completely replaces the need for good eyesight or a strong sense of smell. When the platypus hunts underwater, it closes its eyes, so sight is completely off, and it closes its nostrils, so smell doesn't work either. Hearing is also limited underwater because sound travels differently in water than in air, and the platypus's ears are sealed shut. Taste is only used after the platypus catches food and is chewing it, so it doesn't help during hunting. But touch through the bill works perfectly. With 40,000 electroreceptors and mechanoreceptors detecting every movement, pressure change, and electrical signal in the water. The bill is so sensitive that it can feel the texture of the river bottom, detect a shrimp crawling 10 centimeters away, and sense the direction a fish is swimming, all through touch alone. This makes the platypus's sense of touch far more powerful than any other mammal's sense of touch. And it's the reason the platypus can hunt successfully in complete darkness, where other animals would be helpless. On land, the platypus uses its other senses more. It can see predators approaching, hear sounds in the environment, and smell food or danger. But even on land, the bill remains the primary tool for exploring and understanding the world. When a platypus walks along the river bank, it constantly touches the ground with its bill, feeling for insects, worms, or small creatures hiding in the soil. The combination of electroreception, a feeling electricity, and mechanoreception, a feeling pressure and movement, makes the bill a complete sensory organ that gives the platypus a picture of its environment without needing to see or smell. Scientists studying the platypus brain found that the area dedicated to processing bill sensations is enormous, taking up 2/3 of the sensory cortex, while the areas for vision and smell are tiny, showing how much the brain prioritizes touch. This is a remarkable example of evolution adapting an animal's senses to match its lifestyle. If you live in dark water and hunt by feeling, you don't need good eyes, you need an amazing touch sense. The platypus teaches us that the 5 senses are not equally important for all animals, and that nature can emphasize some senses while minimizing others, depending on what's most useful for survival. It swims with front feet paddling and back feet steering. The platypus has a very efficient swimming technique that divides the work between front and back feet, making it one of the best swimmers among small mammals. When the platypus wants to move forward, it uses its large, webbed front feet as the main propulsion, spreading the webbing wide and making strong strokes that push against the water. The front feet move in a synchronized motion, both reaching forward together and then paddling backward together, creating a smooth and powerful stroke that propels the platypus through the water at speeds of up to 4 kilometers per hour. The back feet work differently. They're not used for paddling but for steering and stability. The back feet are also webbed, but they stay mostly extended and act like a rudder on a boat, angling left or right to turn the platypus in the desired direction. When the platypus wants to turn left, it pushes its back feet to the right, and when it wants to turn right, it pushes its back feet to the left, just like steering a kayak or canoe. The tail also helps with steering, working together with the back feet to make sharp turns and changes in direction. This division of labor is very efficient because it allows the platypus to swim forward while simultaneously turning, diving, or surfacing, without having to stop and change direction. The platypus can make very sharp turns underwater, sometimes turning 90 degrees or more in just 1 or 2 strokes, which is essential when chasing fast prey or escaping from predators. The swimming technique is also energy efficient, because the platypus uses its strong front leg muscles for propulsion while using smaller back leg muscles only for steering, which conserves energy during long hunting sessions. When the platypus wants to dive deeper, it angles its body downward and uses its back feet to push down, and when it wants to surface, it angles upward and uses its back feet to push up. Babies learn this swimming technique quickly, and by the time they're 8 weeks old, they're swimming almost as well as adults, showing that the technique is largely instinctive rather than learned. The platypus can swim for hours without getting tired, covering distances of several kilometers in a single hunting session, and it can dive and surface repeatedly without problems. This swimming ability is one of the key adaptations that makes the platypus so successful in its river environment, allowing it to search large areas for food, escape quickly when needed, and explore different parts of the river system. Male platypus venom is strongest only when young. It weakens with age. This is a surprising fact that researchers discovered only recently, and it changes how we understand the role of venom in platypus life. When male platypuses are young, between 1 and 3 years old, their venom glands produce the strongest and most concentrated venom, and their spurs are sharp and capable of delivering deep, painful wounds. During this period, young males are establishing their territories, fighting with other males for mates, and proving themselves in the competitive world of platypus reproduction. So they need the most potent venom available. But as males get older, past 4 or 5 years old, something interesting happens. The venom production gradually decreases, and the venom becomes weaker and less concentrated. Older males, those over 6 or 7 years old, produce venom that's only about half as strong as the venom produced by young males, and their spurs also become duller and less capable of penetrating skin deeply. Scientists believe this happens because older males have already established their territories and mates, so they don't need to fight as much, and the energy required to produce strong venom is better spent on other things like maintaining body condition or surviving through difficult times. The weakening of venom with age is similar to what happens in some other animals, like certain snakes and spiders, where younger individuals have more potent venom because they need it more for hunting and defense. For platypuses, the venom is primarily used for fighting other males during breeding season, not for hunting food. So as males get older and stop fighting as much, the venom becomes less important. This also means that if an older male platypus stings a human, the pain will be less severe and lasting than if a young male stings someone, though it will still be very painful. The age-related change in venom is another example of how the platypus's body adapts to different life stages, prioritizing different needs at different times. Researchers studying this found that the venom gland itself shrinks slightly in older males, producing less venom overall, and the chemical composition of the venom changes, with some pain, causing proteins becoming less abundant. This discovery is important for understanding platypus behavior and evolution, and it shows that even something as dramatic as venom is not fixed, but changes throughout the animal's life in response to changing needs and circumstances. The platypus burrow can be up to 3 meters long inside the earth. This might not seem very long compared to some animal burrows, but for a small animal weighing only 1 to 2 kilograms, a 3-meter tunnel is a substantial construction project that requires significant effort and time to build. The burrow starts at the water's edge, usually hidden behind vegetation, rocks, or fallen branches, and it angles upward into the bank at about 30 to 45 degrees, creating a tunnel that's wide enough for the platypus to move through comfortably, about 15 to 20 centimeters in diameter. The tunnel doesn't go straight. It often curves and changes direction, sometimes looping back on itself or branching into side passages, which makes it harder for predators to follow and gives the platypus multiple escape routes. At the end of the tunnel, there's a nesting chamber that's slightly larger than the tunnel, about 30 centimeters wide and 20 centimeters high, lined with dry grass, leaves, twigs, and fur that the platypus collects and drags in to make a soft, comfortable bed. The nesting chamber is the most important part of the burrow because it's where the platypus sleeps, where females raise their babies, and where the animal feels safest and most protected. The entrance to the burrow is usually underwater, hidden below the surface, so predators looking along the bank can't see it or reach it easily. When the platypus wants to enter or leave, It swims through the underwater entrance, emerges into the tunnel, and pushes its way through the dirt to the other end. Building a burrow this size takes the platypus several nights of continuous work, using its strong front claws to dig, its body to pack the dirt, and its mouth to carry away loose soil. The platypus chooses the location carefully, looking for soft soil that's easy to dig, but stable enough not to collapse. And it avoids areas that might flood during heavy rain. A single platypus may have several burrows along a stretch of river, using different ones on different nights, which makes it harder for predators to learn where to find it and gives the platypus options if one burrow is disturbed or damaged. The burrow is kept clean and well maintained, with old nesting material removed and walls repaired if they crack or collapse, showing that the platypus takes pride in its home and understands its importance for survival. It stores fat in its tail to survive when food is scarce. This is one of the cleverest survival adaptations the platypus has, and it works similarly to how camels store fat in their humps or how skunks store fat in their tails for winter. The platypus's tail is not just flat and wide for steering while swimming. It's also a fat storage organ, filled with layers of fat that the platypus can draw upon when food is hard to find. When food is abundant, like during spring and summer when rivers are full of shrimp, worms, and insect larvae, the platypus eats extra and converts the excess energy into fat, which is stored in the tail. As the platypus stores more fat, its tail becomes noticeably thicker and rounder, sometimes swelling to 50% larger than its normal size, and the fat can make up to 30% of the tail's total weight. When food becomes scarce, like during droughts when rivers shrink and dry up, or during cold winters when prey is less active and harder to catch, the platypus lives off this stored fat, slowly using it up and watching its tail shrink back to normal size. This adaptation is essential because the platypus needs to eat about 20% of its body weight every day, and if it couldn't store extra energy for bad times, it would starve quickly during periods of food shortage. Researchers measuring wild platypuses found that tail thickness varies seasonally, with tails being thickest in autumn when food is plentiful and thinnest in spring after winter food scarcity, showing that the fat storage and usage cycle is tightly connected to seasonal changes. The fat in the tail is high-quality energy, packed with calories that the platypus can convert into movement, warmth, and bodily functions, and it's easily accessible without requiring the platypus to break down muscle or other important tissues. This fat storage also helps the platypus survive during breeding season, when females are incubating eggs and not eating much, and when males are fighting and expending extra energy. The tail fat is a safety net that gives the platypus flexibility and resilience, allowing it to survive temporary hardships without dying. And it's one of the reasons the platypus has been successful for over 100 million years, despite changing environmental conditions. The platypus doesn't have a stomach like other animals. Its digestion is different. This is one of the most unusual internal features of the platypus, and it's something that makes it completely different from almost every other mammal you know. When most animals eat food, it goes from the mouth to the stomach, where strong acids and enzymes break it down into smaller pieces that can be absorbed by the body. The stomach is like a chemical processing plant that prepares food for the intestines, and it's essential for digestion in most animals. But the platypus doesn't have a true stomach. Instead, food goes directly from the esophagus into the intestines, where digestion happens without the intermediate stomach step. The platypus's digestive tract is simpler and more like that of a reptile or bird than a typical mammal, showing its ancient evolutionary origins. Without a stomach, the platypus relies on enzymes in its intestines and on the mechanical grinding it does with stones in its mouth to break down food, and this works well for the soft aquatic creatures it eats. Scientists studying platypus digestion found that the animal produces digestive enzymes in its pancreas and releases them directly into the intestines, where they break down proteins, fats, and carbohydrates from the shrimp, worms, and insect larvae the platypus eats. The absence of a stomach means the platypus can digest food more quickly than animals with stomachs, because there's one less step in the process. But it also means the platypus can't store as much food at once or digest hard, tough materials very well. This is why the platypus eats only soft aquatic prey that's easy to break down. It couldn't digest tough plant material or hard bones even if it tried. The lack of a stomach also means the platypus needs to eat more frequently than animals with stomachs, because it can't store large meals and digest them slowly over time. This is one of the reasons the platypus spends so many hours each day hunting. It needs to keep eating to keep its digestion going and its body fueled. The platypus's digestive system is a perfect example of how evolution can take different paths, and how an animal can be successful even without having some of the organs we think are essential for mammals. It's also a reminder that the platypus is in many ways more like its ancient reptile ancestors than like modern mammals, keeping features that other mammals lost millions of years ago. Female platypuses grow only one spur, but it disappears when they become adults. This is a strange and interesting fact about female platypuses that shows how differently males and females develop, even though they start out looking very similar. When baby platypuses are born, both males and females have small spurs on their hind legs, little pointed projections that look like tiny horns sticking out from the ankle. These spurs are present in both sexes because they're part of the basic platypus body plan, and they develop in the embryo before the sex differences become apparent. But as the platypuses grow and mature, something different happens to males and females. In males, the spurs continue to grow, becoming larger, sharper, and connected to venom glands that produce the powerful poison used for fighting. In females, however, only one spur continues to develop for a short time, usually the one on the left leg, while the other spur stops growing and shrinks away. This single spur in females is much smaller than the male spur. It's not connected to any venom gland, and it doesn't produce poison. Most importantly, this female spur doesn't last. By the time the female is about 1 year old, the spur falls off completely, leaving no trace behind. Adult female platypuses have smooth ankles with no spurs at all, while adult males keep their spurs throughout their lives. Scientists believe this happens because the spur is a male trait used for fighting and reproduction, so it's not needed in females and is actively eliminated as they mature. The temporary spur in young females might serve some purpose during development, maybe helping with balance or climbing, but it's not clear exactly what function it has before it disappears. This difference in spur development is one of the easiest ways to tell male and female platypuses apart when they're young, and it shows how sex-specific traits can develop even in animals that look very similar overall. The fact that females start with spurs and lose them is another example of how the platypus keeps ancestral features that other mammals have completely lost, and how development in platypuses follows patterns that are more like reptiles than like modern mammals. The platypus has 10 sex chromosomes. Humans have only 2. This is one of the most shocking genetic facts about the platypus, and it shows how different the platypus's biology is from everything else we're used to. Humans and most other mammals have 2 sex chromosomes that determine gender. Females have 2 X chromosomes, XXX, and males have 1 X and 1 Y chromosome, XY. These 2 chromosomes carry the genes that decide whether an embryo develops as male or female, and the system is simple and straightforward. But the platypus has completely abandoned this system and uses something much more complex. With 10 sex chromosomes arranged in a chain that determines gender in a way scientists are still trying to fully understand. Male platypuses have 5 X chromosomes and 5 Y chromosomes, while female platypuses have 10 X chromosomes. During reproduction, these chromosomes line up in a chain and separate in a complex pattern, with males producing sperm that have either 5 XX or 5 Y chromosomes, and females producing eggs that all have 5 X chromosomes. This means the sex of the baby is determined by which type of sperm fertilizes the egg. Just like in humans, but the process is far more complicated with 10 chromosomes involved instead of 2. Scientists discovered this when they sequenced the platypus genome in 2008, and it was one of the biggest surprises in genetics, because nobody expected a mammal to have so many sex chromosomes. The platypus sex chromosomes are also more similar to bird sex chromosomes than to mammal sex chromosomes, showing that the platypus is a bridge between these two groups and keeps features from both. This complex system is stable and works perfectly for platypuses, even though it seems unnecessarily complicated from a human perspective, and it's been in place for at least 100 million years without changing. The 10-chromosome system is one of the strongest pieces of evidence that the platypus is a unique animal that doesn't fit neatly into our categories of mammals, birds, or reptiles, but occupies its own special place in the tree of life. It's also a reminder that nature is far more creative and varied than we often imagine, and that there are many different ways to solve the same biological problem. It has genes from mammals, birds, and reptiles all mixed together. It's like a hybrid of all of them. When scientists sequenced the platypus genome, they expected to find mostly mammal genes, with maybe some unusual features, but what they found was completely unexpected and remarkable. The platypus genome contains about 18,500 genes, and when researchers compared these genes to genes from other animals, they discovered that roughly 75% of platypus genes are similar to genes found in other mammals, but the remaining 25% are a mix of bird and reptile genes that other mammals don't have. This means the platypus is literally a genetic mosaic, carrying DNA from multiple groups of animals that diverged from each other hundreds of millions of years ago. The platypus has genes for producing milk and fur like a mammal, but also genes for laying eggs and producing venom like a reptile, and even some genes for color vision and feather development that are more similar to bird genes than mammal genes. One of the most surprising findings was that the platypus has genes for venom that are similar to venom genes in snakes and sea anemones, even though platypuses are not closely related to either of these animals. This suggests that the platypus evolved venom independently but landed on similar chemical solutions, a phenomenon called convergent evolution. The platypus also has genes that are completely unique, found nowhere else in the animal kingdom, which shows that the platypus has evolved some features that are truly its own and not inherited from any other group. This genetic mix makes the platypus incredibly valuable for scientific research, because by studying platypus genes, scientists can understand how mammals evolved from reptile-like ancestors and what features were lost or changed along the way. The platypus genome is like a time capsule that preserves ancient genetic information that other mammals have lost. And it provides a window into what early mammals might have looked like and how they lived. This genetic diversity is also why the platypus is so difficult to classify and why it continues to surprise scientists even after more than 200 years of study. It really is a one-of-kind animal that doesn't fit into any simple category. The platypus passes electricity through its bill to sense prey. It's like sonar. This is one of the most remarkable sensory abilities in the animal kingdom, and it works in a way that's similar to how bats and dolphins use sonar. But instead of sound, the platypus uses electricity. When the platypus swims with its bill sweeping side to side through the water, it doesn't just passively receive electrical signals from prey. It actively sends out its own electrical pulses, and then listens for how those pulses bounce back, creating an electrical image of what's around it. The bill contains special electroreceptor cells that can detect tiny electrical fields as small as 0.1 microvolts per centimeter, which is so sensitive that it can detect the electrical signal from a single shrimp muscle contracting. When the platypus moves its bill, it creates a weak electrical field around itself, and when this field encounters a living creature, the creature's own electrical signals interact with the platypus's field, creating a pattern that the platypus can interpret. This is called active electrolocation, and it's similar to how a bat emits sound waves and listens for echoes to navigate and hunt, except the platypus uses electricity instead of sound. The platypus can determine not just that prey is present, but also how far away it is, what direction it's moving, how big it is, and even what type of creature it is, all from the electrical signature alone. This ability is so precise that the platypus can distinguish between a live shrimp and a dead one, between different species of prey, and even between prey and non-living objects like rocks or pebbles. The electrical sensing works in complete darkness, in murky water where visibility is zero, and even when the platypus's eyes, ears, and nostrils are completely sealed shut. Researchers studying this found that the platypus can detect prey at distances of up to 30 centimeters from its bill, and it can track moving prey with accuracy that's almost perfect, missing very few hunting attempts. This electrolocation ability is the platypus's primary hunting tool, and it's so effective that the platypus can hunt successfully in conditions where no other predator could find food. It's a testament to the creativity of evolution, which found a completely different sensory approach than vision or hearing. And it shows that there are many ways to perceive the world beyond what humans can experience. Platypus eggs are soft like leather, not hard like chicken eggs. When you think of eggs, you probably imagine hard shells like chicken eggs that you have to crack with a knife or against the side of a bowl. But platypus eggs are completely different. The platypus egg has a soft, flexible shell that feels more like thin leather or parchment paper than a hard shell, and you can squeeze it gently without breaking it. The shell is only about 0.2 millimeters thick, which is incredibly thin. And it's made of a material called calcium carbonate, but in a form that's much more flexible than the hard shells of bird eggs. This soft shell is similar to the eggs laid by reptiles like lizards and snakes, which also lay soft, shelled eggs rather than hard ones, that it reflects the platypus's ancient evolutionary connection to reptiles. The egg is oval-shaped, about 11 millimeters long and 9 millimeters wide, roughly the size of a small grape or a navy bean, and it's white or slightly off-white in color. When the female platypus lays the egg, it's still soft and pliable, and it sticks to her belly fur because of a slightly sticky coating on the shell. The female then curls around the egg, keeping it warm and dry, and over the next 10 days, the shell hardens slightly but never becomes truly hard like a chicken egg. Inside the soft shell, the baby platypus develops slowly, green fur, a bill, webbed feet, and all its organs, protected by the egg's membranes and the yolk that provides nutrition. The soft shell has advantages. It's lighter and easier for the mother to carry and incubate. It allows gases like oxygen and carbon dioxide to pass through more easily, and it's less likely to crack if the mother accidentally rolls over it. But it also has disadvantages, like being more vulnerable to drying out or being damaged if the environment gets too wet or too dry. The mother platypus is very careful with her eggs, keeping them in a dry, protected burrow, and never leaving them unattended for long, because the soft shell requires more protection than a hard shell would. When the baby is ready to hatch, it uses a small egg tooth on its snout to scratch and push against the soft shell from the inside, and the shell tears open relatively easily compared to a hard chicken egg. This soft egg is another example of how the platypus keeps ancient reptile-like features that other mammals abandoned millions of years ago. And it's one of the many things that makes the platypus so unique and fascinating. The mother incubates the egg for 10 days, curling her body around it. After laying her 1 to 3 tiny eggs, the female platypus doesn't just leave them alone. She commits to a full 10 days of constant incubation, keeping the eggs warm and protected until they hatch. During this entire period, the mother curls her body into a C shape, wrapping her tail over the top of the eggs and holding them firmly against her warm belly, where the temperature is a constant 32 degrees Celsius, slightly warmer than human body temperature. This position is uncomfortable and restrictive, and the mother doesn't leave the burrow to hunt during those 10 days, so she must have stored enough fat in her tail and body beforehand to survive without eating. The mother occasionally shifts her position slightly to adjust the eggs or redistribute her weight, but she never leaves them unattended. Not even for a few minutes, because the eggs would cool down and the developing babies could die. The eggs need to be kept at a constant temperature, because the embryo inside is very sensitive to temperature changes. And if it gets too cold, development slows down or stops. And if it gets too hot, the embryo can be damaged. The mother's body heat is perfect for incubation, and her fur provides insulation that keeps the eggs warm even if the burrow gets cold. During incubation, the eggs change slightly. They absorb some moisture from the mother's skin, the shell hardens a bit, and inside, the baby platypus grows rapidly, developing from a tiny cluster of cells into a fully formed but helpless baby with fur, a bill, and webbed feet. The mother is very protective during this time, and if she senses danger or disturbance near the burrow entrance, she may move the eggs to a different location or build an extra wall to block the entrance. After 10 days of constant incubation, the babies are ready to hatch, and they use their small egg teeth to crack the soft shell from the inside, pushing and scratching until they can wiggle out. The mother stays with the newly hatched babies, continuing to curl around them for warmth and starting to produce milk to feed them, transitioning from incubation to nursing without any break in her care. This 10-day incubation period is essential for the baby's development, and it shows how much the mother invests in her offspring, risking her own survival by not eating for so long to ensure her babies have a chance to live. Only 1 to 3 babies are born at a time, usually 2. When most people think about animals having babies, they imagine litters of many puppies, kittens, or piglets. But the platypus has a very small family size, with mothers typically giving birth to just 1 to 3 babies at once, and 2 being the most common number. This small litter size is unusual for such a small mammal, and it reflects the platypus's ancient reproductive strategy and the enormous investment the mother makes in each individual baby. When a female platypus lays eggs, she typically lays exactly 2 eggs, though sometimes she lays only 1 or as many as 3. And the number seems to depend on the mother's age, health, and how much food was available before she became pregnant. Younger mothers tend to lay fewer eggs, often just 1, while older, more experienced mothers are more likely to lay 2 or 3. The small litter size means that each baby is very precious to the mother, and she invests enormous energy and time into raising them. Staying with them constantly for the first few weeks and nursing them for 3 to 4 months. Having only a few babies at a time also means that platypus populations grow slowly, and if something bad happens to a mother or her babies, it takes a long time for the population to recover. This is one of the reasons platypuses are vulnerable to threats like habitat loss, pollution, and climate change. They can't reproduce quickly enough to replace lost individuals. The small litter size is similar to other long-lived mammals like humans, elephants, and whales, which also have few babies but invest heavily in each one, rather than like small rodents or rabbits, which have large litters but invest little in each individual offspring. The babies are born tiny, blind, and helpless, weighing only 5 to 10 grams each, and they need constant care and warmth to survive. The mother can only effectively care for a small number of babies at once, which is probably why she doesn't lay more than 3 eggs. If she had more, she wouldn't be able to keep them all warm or produce enough milk for all of them. This small family size is a trade-off. Platypuses have fewer babies, but each baby has a better chance of surviving to adulthood because of the intense parental care it receives. The platypus drinks about 50 ml of water per day while swimming. This might seem like a very small amount. 50 milliliters is roughly the amount in a small drinking glass or a quarter of a cup. But it's exactly what the platypus needs to stay hydrated without having to stop and drink separately from hunting. The platypus gets most of its water not by stopping at the water's edge and lapping it up like a dog or cat, but by swallowing small gulps while swimming and hunting, taking in water along with the air it needs to breathe, while swimming along the river bottom with its bill sweeping side to side. The platypus periodically opens its mouth slightly and lets a small amount of water enter, then closes its jaws and uses its tongue to push the water toward the throat while letting excess water flow out through the sides of the bill. This drinking action is quick, taking only a second or 2, and it happens automatically without the platypus needing to stop hunting or surface specifically to drink. The platypus needs about 50 ml of water per day to maintain proper hydration, balance its electrolytes, and support its body's normal functions. And it gets this water spread out over many hours of swimming. Rather than in one big drinking session, this amount of water is proportional to the platypus's body size. A 1.5 kilogram platypus needs about 33 ml of water per kilogram of body weight, which is similar to what other small mammals need. The water the platypus drinks is fresh river water, not salty or polluted, and it seems to prefer water that's cool, clean, and rich in oxygen. When water quality is poor, when it's polluted with chemicals, covered in algae, or contaminated with sediment, the platypus may drink less or avoid drinking altogether, which can lead to dehydration and health problems. Baby platypuses get most of their water from their mother's milk during the first few months, but they start drinking water independently at about 8 weeks old, when they begin swimming and hunting on their own. The platypus's ability to drink while swimming is another example of how it has evolved to do multiple things at once, maximizing efficiency and minimizing the time it needs to spend on basic survival tasks. This efficient drinking method is essential for the platypus's lifestyle, allowing it to stay hydrated without interrupting its hunting or exposing itself to danger by stopping at the water's edge. Its fur is waterproof. Water doesn't enter the deep layers. This is one of the most important adaptations the platypus has for living in water, and it's what allows the platypus to stay warm and dry even when swimming for hours in cold rivers. The platypus's fur is incredibly dense, with about 90,000 hairs per square centimeter, which is more than almost any other mammal, and these hairs are arranged in 2 distinct layers that work together to keep water out. The bottom layer is a thick, soft undercoat made of fine, curly hairs that trap a layer of air next to the skin, providing insulation and keeping the platypus warm, even in water that's near freezing. The top layer is made of longer, straight guard hairs that lie flat against the body and repel water, causing it to bead up and roll off like water on a waxed car. When the platypus enters the water, the guard hairs become wet on the surface, but the water doesn't penetrate through to the undercoat, so the air layer stays intact and the skin stays dry. This waterproof quality is maintained by oils that the platypus spreads over its fur while grooming, rubbing oil from glands near its tail over its entire body to keep the guard hairs water repellent. The platypus spends time grooming every day, licking and smoothing its fur, removing dirt and debris, and redistributing the waterproof oils. And this maintenance is essential because matted or dirty fur loses its waterproof quality. When the platypus emerges from the water, it shakes its body vigorously, and most of the water rolls off immediately, leaving the fur mostly dry on the surface. The waterproof fur is so effective that the platypus can swim in water as cold as 5 degrees Celsius for hours without getting hypothermia. And when it climbs out of the water, it doesn't need to dry off. It can immediately go into its burrow and rest without getting cold. Baby platypuses are born with soft, fluffy fur that's not yet waterproof, and they can't swim until their fur develops the waterproof quality at about 8 weeks old, which is why they stay in the burrow until then. The waterproof fur is essential for the platypus's survival, and it's one of the key adaptations that makes life in the river possible, allowing the platypus to hunt, explore, and travel through water without losing body heat or getting souped. It has a layer of fat under the skin that helps keep heat in cold water. This layer of fat is essential for the platypus's survival in cold rivers, and it works like a built-in wetsuit that keeps the animal warm even when the water temperature drops dangerously low. Underneath the platypus's skin, between the skin and the muscles, there's a continuous layer of fat that's about 3 to 5 millimeters thick, depending on the season and how well the platypus has been eating. This fat layer is called subcutaneous fat, and it acts as insulation, trapping body heat inside and preventing it from escaping into the cold water. Fat is a poor conductor of heat, which means it doesn't let heat pass through easily, so the platypus's body heat stays close to its vital organs, and doesn't get lost to the surrounding water. When the platypus swims in cold water, sometimes as cold as 5 degrees Celsius, which is just above freezing, the fat layer keeps its core temperature at a constant 32 degrees Celsius, which is normal for the platypus. This is remarkable because most small mammals would lose heat so quickly in water that cold that they'd get hypothermia within minutes, but the platypus can stay in the water for hours without its body temperature dropping. The fat layer also helps the platypus float slightly, making it easier to swim and dive without expending extra energy. And it provides a cushion that protects the platypus's body from bumps and bruises when it's swimming near rocks or diving into the river bottom. The thickness of the fat layer changes throughout the year. It's thickest in autumn when the platypus has been eating well and preparing for winter, and it's thinnest in spring after the platypus has used up the stored fat during cold months when food was scarce. Baby platypuses are born with very little fat, which is another reason they need to stay in the burrow with their mother for the first few months. Because they can't regulate their body temperature well and would get cold quickly if they went into the water too soon. As the babies grow and start eating solid food, they build up their fat layers, and by the time they're 12 weeks old, they have enough fat to stay warm in cold water independently. The fat layer is also important for energy storage, as the platypus can break down the fat and use it as fuel when food is hard to find, similar to how the fat in the tail is used. This dual-purpose fat, insulation and energy storage, is one of the cleverest adaptations the platypus has, and it's essential for surviving in the variable and sometimes harsh conditions of Australian rivers. The platypus doesn't poop every day, it saves energy. This might sound strange or even gross, but it's actually a clever energy-saving strategy that helps the platypus survive when food is scarce or when it needs to conserve resources. Most animals poop regularly, often after every meal, because their digestive systems move food through quickly and waste needs to be eliminated to prevent buildup of toxins. But the platypus has a slower digestive system, and it can hold its waste for several days at a time, only defecating when it's convenient or when the buildup becomes too large to hold. When the platypus does poop, it produces small, cylindrical pellets that are about 1 to 2 centimeters long, dark green or brown in color, and they have a slightly sticky texture that makes them cling to rocks or the river bottom. The platypus often poops in specific locations along the river, creating what scientists call latrines, which are areas where multiple platypuses or the same platypus over time and leave their waste. These latrines serve as communication points because the smell of the poop conveys information about which platypus was there, how healthy it is, and whether it's male or female. By holding waste for longer periods, the platypus saves energy that would otherwise be used for digestion and elimination, and it also reduces the number of times it needs to stop hunting or expose itself to danger while defecating. This energy-saving behavior is especially important during times when food is scarce, like during droughts or cold winters, because every bit of saved energy helps the platypus survive. The platypus's ability to hold waste is also related to its slow metabolism. The platypus burns energy more slowly than most mammals of its size, which means food moves through its system more slowly and waste builds up more gradually. This slow metabolism is an adaptation to the platypus's lifestyle, which involves long periods of hunting followed by long periods of rest, rather than constant activity. Baby platypuses poop more frequently than adults because they're growing rapidly and eating constantly, but as they mature, they develop the ability to hold waste for longer periods, and adult platypuses may only poop every 2 to 3 days. This irregular pooping schedule is another example of how the platypus is different from most other mammals, keeping ancient traits and developing unique strategies that work well for its specific lifestyle and environment. The front paws have claws for digging burrows in hard soil. When the platypus isn't swimming, its front feet transform from paddles into powerful digging tools. And the claws are the key feature that makes this possible. The front feet have 5 sharp, curved claws that are about 1 centimeter long, made of tough keratin, the same material as human fingernails, and they're positioned at the tips of the toes where they can grip and pull soil effectively. When the platypus wants to dig, it folds back the webbing on its front feet, revealing the claws, and then uses its strong arm muscles to drive the claws into the soil, pull backward, and remove chunks of dirt. The platypus digs with both front feet simultaneously, working in a coordinated motion that's fast and efficient, and it can remove about a liter of soil per minute when digging a new burrow. The claws are strong enough to dig through hard, compacted soil that would be difficult for many other animals to penetrate, and they're sharp enough to cut through small roots and tangled vegetation that the platypus encounters while digging. When the platypus is finished digging and wants to swim, it folds the webbing back over the claws, hiding them and creating a smooth paddle surface that's efficient for swimming. This folding mechanism is automatic and controlled by muscles in the foot, so the platypus doesn't need to think about it. It just switches from digging mode to swimming mode instantly when it enters the water. The claws are also used for other purposes besides digging, like climbing up steep banks, tearing apart rotting logs to find insects, scratching itself while grooming, and defending against predators if necessary. Baby platypuses are born with small claws that grow quickly, and by the time they're 6 weeks old, they have fully developed claws that they use to explore the burrow and practice digging. The claws stay sharp throughout the platypus's life because they're constantly being used and worn down, and new keratin grows to replace the worn parts, keeping them effective for digging. These powerful claws are essential for the platypus's survival because without the ability to dig burrows, the platypus wouldn't have a safe place to sleep, raise babies, or hide from predators, and it would be much more vulnerable to danger. The male defends his territory by swimming in circles and marking the scent. When male platypuses reach maturity and start competing for mates, they become very territorial, and they defend specific stretches of river from other males using a combination of physical presence and chemical marking. A male platypus's territory can be anywhere from 1 to 5 kilometers of river, depending on how much food is available and how many other males are in the area. And the male patrols this territory regularly to make sure no intruders enter. When the male detects another male in his territory, he swims in large circles around the intruder, making himself look bigger and more intimidating. And he may also splash water with his tail or charge at the intruder to drive it away. If swimming in circles and visual displays don't work, the male will escalate to physical aggression, using his venomous spur to sting the intruder, which usually ends the fight quickly because the pain is so severe. But before fights happen, males try to avoid them by marking their territory with scent, which is a simpler and safer way to communicate boundaries. The male platypus has special scent glands nearness that produce a strong, musky odor, and it rubs these glands against rocks, logs, and the riverbank as it swims along, leaving scent marks that other males can smell. When another male comes along and smells these marks, it knows that the territory is already occupied, and it usually leaves without trying to challenge the resident male. This scent marking is continuous. The male refreshes the marks regularly, especially after rain or when the scent might have faded. And the stronger and more frequent the marks, the more serious the warning to intruders. Female platypuses also leave scent marks, but they're less aggressive about territorial defense and more focused on marking paths between their burrows and good hunting areas. The territorial behavior is strongest during breeding season, which happens in spring, when males are compete intensely for access to females, and it's weakest during other times of the year when males are more tolerant of each other. This territorial system helps reduce unnecessary fighting and injury, because most intruders leave when they smell the marks or see the resident male, and fights only happen when someone ignores the warnings. For the resident male, defending territory is essential for reproductive success, because males with good territories get more mates and produce more offspring, passing on their genes to the next generation. The platypus can live up to 17 years in the wild, This is a surprisingly long lifespan for such a small mammal, and it reflects the platypus's slow life history strategy, where it takes time to mature, has few babies, and invests heavily in each one. Most small mammals like mice, rats, or small marsupials live only 1 to 3 years, but the platypus lives much longer, with an average lifespan of 11 to 14 years in the wild and a maximum recorded lifespan of 17 years. In captivity, where there are no predators, diseases are treated, and food is always available, platypuses have lived even longer, with some individuals reaching 21 years old. But this is rare and not typical for wild platypuses. The long lifespan is connected to the platypus's reproductive strategy, because platypuses have few babies at a time, usually 2. They need to live a long time to produce enough offspring to maintain the population. A female platypus doesn't start reproducing until she's about 2 years old, and she may produce 2 to 3 litters per year during her reproductive years, which means she can have 20 to 30 babies over her lifetime if she lives to be 14 or 15. This is just enough to replace herself and her mate in the population, assuming most babies survive to adulthood. But in reality, many babies die before reproducing, so the population grows slowly. The long lifespan also means that platypuses can survive through bad years when food is scarce or conditions are harsh, because they have many years to reproduce and raise babies, rather than needing to reproduce quickly like short-lived animals. Older platypuses are experienced hunters, know their territories well, and are better at avoiding predators, so they have higher survival rates than young platypuses, which contributes to the long lifespan. However, the platypus faces many threats in the wild that can shorten its life, including predators like foxes, snakes, and birds of prey, diseases like fungal infections that affect the skin and fur, pollution that contaminates the water and food, and habitat loss from dams, droughts, and development that destroy rivers and burrows. Researchers studying wild platypuses can tell their age by looking at wear on their teeth or gums, since adults don't have teeth, the condition of their fur, and the size and thickness of their bones, and they've found that most platypuses die between 5 and 10 years old, with only a small percentage living to the maximum 17 years. The long lifespan is one of the reasons platypuses are vulnerable to threats. If something kills many adults, it takes a long time for the population to recover because platypuses can't reproduce quickly enough to replace the losses. It is one of the few venomous mammals, only it in some shrews. When you think of venomous animals, you probably imagine snakes, spiders, scorpions, or sea creatures like jellyfish and stonefish, not mammals. Mammals are usually thought of as harmless, furry creatures that don't have venom or poison, but the platypus breaks this rule completely. The platypus is one of only 2 venomous mammals in the entire world. The other being the short-tailed shrew, a tiny mouse-like animal that lives in North America and Europe. This makes the platypus incredibly rare and special, because venom in mammals is so uncommon that for a long time scientists didn't even believe it existed. The male platypus has venom glands in its thighs that produce a powerful toxin, and hollow spurs on its hind legs that deliver the venom when it kicks an attacker or fighting rival. The venom is complex, containing at least 80 different proteins, many of which are unique to platypuses and not found in any other animal's venom. Some of these proteins are similar to venom from snakes, sea anemones, and cone snails, showing that the platypus evolved venom independently, but landed on similar chemical solutions through convergent evolution. The venom is not used for hunting food. The platypus catches shrimp and worms with its bill, not with poison, but instead for fighting other males during breeding season and defending itself against predators like dogs or foxes that try to attack it. Female platypuses also have spurs when they're young, but they lose them by adulthood, so only adult males remain venomous, which shows that the venom is primarily for male competition rather than defense. The existence of venom in mammals is still a mystery to scientists, who don't fully understand why the platypus and shrew evolved venom while almost all other mammals didn't. Some researchers think venom might have evolved from genes that originally had different functions, like producing digestive enzymes or immune system proteins. And over time, these genes mutated and became venom toxins. The platypus's venom is a reminder that mammals are more diverse and unusual than we often think, and that nature finds many different solutions to the same problems, like defending against predators or competing for mates. This rare trait makes the platypus even more amazing and worth protecting, because if we lost the platypus, we'd lose one of the only venomous mammals on Earth forever. The platypus never has teeth as an adult. It never had them. This is one of the most surprising facts about the platypus, and it's something that makes it completely different from virtually every other mammal. When baby platypuses are born and develop in the egg, they actually grow tiny temporary teeth inside their jaws, just like human babies grow baby teeth that later fall out. But these baby teeth never come in through the gums while the baby is still in the nest, and they fall out before the platypus even leaves the burrow for the first time. By the time a platypus is 3 to 4 months old and ready to start hunting on its own, it has completely smooth gums with no teeth at all, not even tooth roots hidden in the jawbones. This is unique among mammals. Every other mammal has teeth at some point in its life, whether it's baby teeth that fall out and are replaced by adult teeth, or adult teeth that stay for life. But the platypus is completely toothless as an adult, and it has been this way for at least 100 million years, since the first platypus, like animals, appeared in the fossil record. Instead of teeth, the platypus uses hard gum pads and small stones it collects from the river bottom to crush and grind its food. The stones stay in the mouth for a long time, worn down gradually by crushing food, and eventually smaller pieces get swallowed or spit out, while the platypus gets new stones to replace them. Scientists studying platypus fossils found that ancient platypus relatives did have teeth, but they lost them over millions of years as they evolved to eat soft aquatic prey that doesn't require chewing with sharp teeth. The genes that make teeth are still present in the platypus genome, but they're turned off and don't produce working teeth in adults, which is why baby platypuses start developing teeth that never fully form. This loss of teeth is an adaptation to the platypus's diet of soft shrimp, worms, and insect larvae, which can be crushed with gum pads and stones rather than torn apart with sharp teeth. The toothless mouth is also easier to keep clean and less likely to get infected or develop cavities, which is important for an animal that spends so much time with its mouth underwater. This complete absence of adult teeth is one of the most unusual features of the platypus, and it's a perfect example of how evolution can remove features that are no longer needed, simplifying the body and saving energy that would otherwise be used to grow and maintain teeth. Its brain is small but very efficient for what it needs. The platypus has a brain that weighs only about 5 to 6 grams, which is tiny compared to human brains that weigh about 1/400 grams, and even small compared to other mammals of similar size. But the platypus's brain is not simple or primitive. It's highly specialized and efficient, with different areas developed to handle the platypus's unique needs and sensory abilities. The most remarkable feature of the platypus brain is the enormous area dedicated to processing sensations from the bill, which takes up about 2/3 of the entire sensory cortex. This bill area is so large that it's proportionally bigger than the entire visual cortex in animals with good eyesight, showing how much the platypus relies on touch and electroreception rather than vision. The brain has specialized neurons that process electrical signals from the bill's electroreceptors, allowing the platypus to detect prey at distances up to 30 centimeters away and track moving prey with incredible accuracy. The brain also controls the platypus's swimming movements, coordinating the front and back feet, the tail, and the body in smooth, efficient motions that conserve energy while hunting. Despite being small, the platypus brain is capable of complex behaviors like building elaborate burrows with defensive walls, navigating long distances along rivers, remembering where good hunting spots are, and learning to avoid dangerous areas or predators. The brain is also efficient in how it uses energy, burning glucose and oxygen slowly, which matches the platypus's slow metabolism and low-energy lifestyle. Unlike human brains, which consume about 20% of the body's energy despite being only 2% of its weight, the platypus brain uses a much smaller percentage of energy, allowing the platypus to survive on less food. The brain is protected by a thick skull and is surrounded by cerebrospinal fluid that cushions it from bumps and impacts when the platypus is swimming or digging. Baby platypuses are born with brains that are already about 6% of adult size, and they grow quickly during the first few months as the babies learn to hunt, swim, and navigate their environment. The platypus brain is a perfect example of how evolution shapes the brain to match an animal's lifestyle. If you don't need good vision, you don't need a large visual cortex, but if you rely entirely on your bill's electroreception, that area becomes enormous. This efficient, specialized brain is one of the reasons the platypus has been successful for over 100 million years, surviving changes in climate, habitat, and other animals while maintaining its unique way of life. The platypus is a symbol of Australia. It appears on coins and stamps. The platypus is so beloved and recognized in Australia that it has become one of the country's most important national symbols, representing Australian wildlife, uniqueness, and natural heritage. The platypus appears on the Australian 20-cent coin, which has been minted since 1966 and features a detailed image of a swimming platypus on the reverse side. The coin is silver, colored, and shows the platypus with its bill, webbed feet, and flat tail clearly visible, making it one of the most recognizable platypus images in the world. The platypus also appears on Australian postage stamps, with many different stamps issued over the years featuring platypuses in various poses and situations, from swimming to sleeping to raising babies. In 1987, Australia issued a series of stamps called Australian Wildlife that featured the platypus as the first stamp, showing how important the animal is to Australian identity. The platypus is also used as a mascot for Australian sports teams, appears on souvenirs and tourist materials, and is featured in museums, zoos, and nature centers throughout the country. The Australian government protects the platypus by law, making it illegal to hunt, capture, or harm platypuses without special permits, and it's considered a protected species in all Australian states and territories. The platypus is so iconic that it's been used to represent Australia in international events, like the 2000 Sydney Olympics, where a platypus named Sid was one of the official mascots, along with a kookaburra and an echidna. Australians take great pride in the platypus, recognizing it as something unique that belongs to them and that they must protect for future generations. The platypus's status as a national symbol has helped raise awareness about the need to protect platypus habitat and keep rivers clean. Because people who love the platypus are more likely to support conservation efforts. The platypus's appearance on coins means that millions of people see it every day, which helps keep the animal in public consciousness and reminds people of Australia's unique wildlife. This cultural importance is one of the reasons the platypus has survived despite threats like habitat loss, pollution, and climate change. Because Australians value it and want to keep it around. The platypus is not just an animal. It's a symbol of Australia's natural heritage and a source of national pride that connects people to the unique wildlife of their country. The platypus is still studied by scientists today. There are still secrets to discover, even after more than 200 years of scientific study. Since the first platypus specimen arrived in England in 1799, scientists are still discovering new things about this remarkable animal, and there are many mysteries that remain unsolved. Researchers continue to study the platypus's venom, trying to understand its complex chemical composition and how it causes such intense pain, with the hope that understanding platypus venom might help develop new pain medications or treatments for human conditions. Scientists are also studying the platypus genome, trying to understand how the 10 sex chromosomes work, how the platypus combines mammal, bird, and reptile genes, and what this tells us about how mammals evolved from reptile-like ancestors. The platypus's electroreception is still being investigated, with researchers trying to understand exactly how the bill's electroreceptors work, how the brain processes electrical signals. and whether other animals might have similar abilities that we haven't discovered yet. Wildlife biologists are monitoring platypus populations to understand how they're affected by climate change, droughts, pollution, and habitat loss, and they're developing conservation strategies to protect platypuses and their river habitats. Some scientists are studying the platypus's unique immune system, which is different from other mammals and might provide insights into how to fight diseases in humans. Researchers are also investigating the platypus's reproductive biology, trying to understand how egg-laying mammals produce milk, how embryos develop inside soft eggs, and how the mother cares for helpless babies. New technologies like GPS tracking, underwater cameras, and DNA analysis are revealing new information about platypus behavior, movement patterns, and population genetics that we didn't know before. Despite all we've learned, there are still questions we can't answer, like exactly how platypuses navigate long distances along rivers, how they find mates in large territories, how they communicate with each other, and why their populations are declining in some areas. The platypus continues to surprise and challenge scientists, proving that even well-studied animals can hold secrets that take centuries to uncover. This ongoing research is important not just for understanding the platypus, but for understanding evolution, biology, and the natural world in general, because the platypus is a unique window into the past and a reminder of nature's creativity. The fact that we still have so much to learn about the platypus shows how much wonder and mystery remains in the natural world, and how important it is to keep studying and protecting these remarkable animals. And so we come to the end of our journey through the wonderful world of the platypus. From the mammal that lays eggs to the radar in its bill, from its venomous spurs to its waterproof fur. These 50 facts showed us that nature is far more creative and surprising than we could ever imagine. The platypus continues to swim in Australian rivers, hunting in the dark water, building burrows, raising babies, and surprising scientists even after 200 years of study. It's a reminder that there are still mysteries to discover and wonders to appreciate. If this video helped you relax or fall asleep, please give it a thumbs up. It really helps our channel reach more sleepy souls. And if you haven't already, subscribe and click the bell icon so you never miss our next relaxing science journey. We create new sleep videos every week featuring different fascinating topics. Drop a comment below and tell us, what fact about the platypus surprised you the most? We read every comment and love hearing from our sleepy community. Thank you for spending this quiet time with us. Thank you for trusting the Science for Sleep channel with your rest. May your dreams be peaceful, may your sleep be deep and restorative, and may you wake up feeling refreshed. Good night, sweet traveler. Sleep well.